It's time to wrap the veneer around the inner edges of the cabinet. For the top and bottom of the cabinet, cut the veneer right up to the frame. When you get to the shelves, cut into the veneer again, but be sure to leave 3/4 of an inch for the inside edge, if you have a shelf like this. Using the roller from the veneering kit, roll over all the veneer with constant pressure. During this process, you may hear a crackling sound. Don't worry, this is just the sound of the veneer adhering correctly. In some spots, you can use a plastic scraper to get into tight areas and corners. Be sure that the scraper edge has been sanded smooth. Now we need to remove the remaining lip from where the vertical piece meets the horizontal. Using a combination square as a guide, score the veneer several times and it will easily come off. Repeat this process as necessary for all of your shelves. Your job will be easier if you replace your knife blade often. The mullion is a vertical piece found between two doors of the same cabinet. It has two inside edges that we need to keep in mind when veneering. Attach the veneer so it is centered on the mullion. This way you can wrap the veneer equally on both sides. Apply it from top to bottom as we've done before. Roll the front of the veneer and then wrap the sides, trimming as you go. The trimming process is different for mullion pieces and regular vertical pieces. For the mullion, which is the piece between the doors, the veneer should not extend over the horizontal pieces and needs to be trimmed off. For the regular vertical pieces, the veneer should extend over the horizontal pieces. As we've done for the vertical pieces, apply contact cement to the front and inside edge of the cabinet. Wait for it to become tacky, then adhere the horizontal veneer. Be sure not to start with the horizontal veneering until every vertical piece has been veneered. Horizontal veneer overlaps the mullion or the regular vertical pieces, we need to trim the excess. Line up your combination square and score it off. If necessary, score it one more time without the combination square to clean up any remaining excess. You'll likely end up with a few small gaps like we have here. When it's touch-up time, we'll show you how to fill it in with putty. Now we need to trim the veneer. Place your knife against the inside of the frame and holding tight, cut the veneer, being careful not to bite into the wood. Then give it a quick sand on the inside edge and move on to the next piece. Don't be intimidated about the details while working. You'll see that once all your touch-ups are done, you'll barely notice the imperfections. Trimming can be done cabinet by cabinet, or once all the veneering has been completed. When trimming a piece that is flush with a shelf, we don't have the lip as a guide. Instead, set up your combination square to the thickness of the frame, in this case 3/4 of an inch, and use this to cut the extra piece off nice and straight. If your upper cabinets don't have a bulkhead, please skip to the next chapter. The spacer between the bulkhead and the cabinet can range from 1/2 inch to 2 inches, depending on your situation. In this case, we have a variation that goes from 3/4 of an inch to 5/8 of an inch. To begin, we cut 2 strips of veneer. Cut the first strip 1/4 of an inch wide and cut the second strip 1/8 of an inch less than the smallest width of the spacer. In our case, the second strip is 5/8 of an inch. After the adhesive has become tacky, carefully apply the 1/4 of an inch strip along the bottom of the spacer. You can see why we try to use the full length. The fewer seams, the better the finish. Then apply the second larger strip tight against the bulkhead. This strip will overlap the smaller strip. Using the double strip technique will eliminate the possibility of noticeable bumps in the veneer. Using a small, smooth-edged object like a plastic scraper, press the veneer into the corner against the bulkhead. Next, we need to veneer all the rough edges of the toe kick. Cut a small piece of veneer to fit over the end piece. Make sure the contact cement is applied and that it is dry enough to attach the veneer. Attach the veneer flush to the end piece, applying firm pressure. Using the roller from the veneering kit, roll over all the veneer with constant pressure. During this process, you may hear a crackling sound. Don't worry, this is just the sound of the veneer adhering correctly. In some spots, you can use a plastic scraper to get into tight areas and corners. Be sure that the scraper edge has been sanded smooth. When veneering, you may come across some spots where the veneer will require custom notching. In this case, we have to notch around the countertop protrusion. Hold the veneer in place and mark it. Then, with the help of a clamp and a straight edge, score a straight line between your marks until the piece of veneer is cut. Your veneer will now fit tightly around the countertop. In this situation, we need to notch around the range hood. Holding the veneer in place, mark where you need to, then measure how much veneer you need to notch out. Clamp the veneer to your work table and measure and mark a few points along the section you need to remove. Then, using a straight edge, notch out the veneer. Apply the veneer and trim it using the process we described earlier. The next step is to install your valance. Start by measuring the opening and add an extra 1/16 of an inch to your measurement. Next, we will be cutting the piece to size using the miter saw. We assume that you are comfortable with your tools and know all the necessary safety precautions, so just be careful and wear your safety glasses. For the purpose of this video, we have removed the safety guard on our tools. Please keep yours on. Adding the 1/16 of an inch is a trick to hold the piece in tight. Start with one side and line it up. Then move to the other side, and with a few taps, you can get it to fit nicely between the cabinets. If this step is going to require a few extra trips to the saw for trimming, believe me, it's worth it. Don't try to get it in the first shot. Before you make the final cuts on the piece, check for defects. Next, pre-drill 2 holes on each end of the cabinet. A 1.5 inch screw will be sufficient to hold this piece in place. Finally, drive in the screws, making sure that the valance is flush with the front edge.
Now, what about light balances, installing light balances? Is this really necessary?
No, it's not necessary. I mean, it could be necessary if you have undermounted lights. Yes, you need to hide them, right? Otherwise, it's just an accessory. It makes it look good. Now, speaking about light balances, you need a miter saw to cut light balances. Or if you want to install crown molding, any decorative moldings, you need miter saw. And you need to be familiar with. If you're not familiar with a miter saw, forget it. Don't do it. Ask for help. You know, a brother-in-law, a handy brother-in-law, or a handy next-door neighbor, friend, whatever. But a few beers, you'll get through it.
Might be the best move you ever made on that one, too.
Of course, the beers after.
Beers afterwards, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Anything else we need to know then from this particular section?
The light balances have been installed after the doors. It was for a shooting purpose, so don't do that. The light balances should be installed before you install the cabinet doors.
Good for bringing that point up for sure.
Yes.